Welcome to week 6 in our virtual Summer in the Garden. This week is Down in the Dirt. I'm Miss Nicole and this is Miss Kelsey.
Hey guys, this week we're going to be talking about the unique soil and rock formations that we have down here in the Florida Keys. So down here we have a unique ecosystem that is like anywhere else in the world. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it was formed and how we got here. Make sure to follow along with your worksheet to answer the questions and complete the activities along with this video.
And this week we have a special challenge. Miss Kelsey and I have hidden painted rocks throughout the garden. Come here for a visit, try to find a painted rock. If you find one, take a picture of its location, keep the rock, and post using KW Virtual Garden for a chance to win a prize.
So we're going to talk a little bit about how the Florida Keys were formed. We have a really unique island chain down here. When you're standing on Key West in the Florida Keys, you're actually standing on an ancient coral reef. So during the Sangomonian era, that was the last interglacial period, the earth was a little bit warmer, so the water was a little bit higher. It was about 30 feet higher than it is today. So all of the keys would have been totally submerged underwater. That's when this coral reef starts to grow. Coral is actually an animal. It looks like maybe a plant or a rock. On a hard coral, each polyp is almost like an individual, and then they form this colony on a limestone rock, which is actually their skeleton. So they're excreting calcium carbonate from the ocean water. They're building this limestone foundation, and they start to grow and build this reef system, right? So then we have the last glacial period, the Wisconsin glaciation period, which starts about 100,000 years ago. During that time, water is now being taken up into glaciers, so our water level drops dramatically. It goes down about 300 feet. So now everything would be totally exposed out here, right? The Florida Bay, which is, so if we have the mainland of Florida, we have the Florida Keys kind of coming off at an angle. The Florida Bay forms this little triangle right here, which today is totally underwater. Way back then, that was actually a forested area. So everything was totally dry. All this coral, the reef that formed the keys, all that tissue is now exposed to the air. So the coral tissue dies off, leaves behind our limestone rock or foundation, which form our islands today. We then have the water levels slowly start to rise again until present day. It's still rising, just at a faster rate. And then it kind of fills in the gaps and forms these islands that we have today. Known as the Florida Keys. So if you're walking around Key West, you can actually see this limestone. Right now I'm standing on a path of limestone. Over here is a really good example. So this is actually an ancient brain coral, and you can see its skeleton engraved into this limestone rock right here. So if you want to be really smart and impress all of your friends, the Florida Keys are made of this coral reef, right? Well, the upper Keys and the lower Florida Keys are a little bit different than each other. The upper Florida Keys, so about Key Largo down to Big Pine Key, are actually exposed reef patches like I was talking about. That's called the Key Largo limestone. Whereas the lower Florida Keys, from Big Pine all the way down through Key West, are called Miami oolite. So that's just a different type of rock. It's actually formed by small organisms, so ancient animals and plants, mostly algae, that form these small calcium carbonate deposits, and they kind of cement on top of each other and form the rocks or the islands that we kind of have today. So I hope you guys learned something cool about the formation of the Florida Keys, and stay tuned for more.
As Miss Kelsey mentioned, our foundation is built up of the Key Largo limestone and the Miami oolite. So that's also how our soil is formed. Now this soil of the Key Largo limestone and the Miami oolite has a pH between 7.2 and 8.2. To put that in perspective, a neutral pH level is 7. So we have slightly higher than neutral, which is considered basic, which is alkaline. Now we also have unique soil because we are the only place that has Maiaca soil. Now Maiaca is sand. So here we can see some of that sandy soil. And the Mayaca comes from an Indian word meaning big water. So we are surrounded by water, therefore we've got the sand and the Mayaca. So the Mayaca soil is made up of sand, which has the least amount of nutrients. Then after that comes Laurel, and then we have Rich. Rich soil has the most amount of nutrients, and rich soil comes from our decomposed leaf litter. So here we have lots of leaf litter. And when this decomposes, that's how we get those nice, healthy nutrients for our plants. When rain comes through that leaf litter onto limestone rock, it becomes acidic. So here we have an example of that. There's leaf litter on top of the rock, and when it rains, it comes through, that acid builds up, and it actually dissolves part of the rock, creating these solution holes. As we mentioned last week in our Water Week, these solution holes can get filled with fresh rainwater, and it can also get filled with soil. When it gets filled with soil, then we have a chance for plants to grow. So here we can see some different roots growing through these solution holes. So the combinations of the Mayaca sand and the decomposed leaf litter give us this wonderful combination of our native plants here in the Florida Keys, and it's what makes our ecosystem so unique. I think I spotted a rock that Miss Kelsey hid. Don't forget to find your rocks and post #KW Virtual Garden.